What's happening, all you beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of The Strange Road. I'm your host, Mikey. We got Bub tonight. Bub, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing. Not
Feeling
much.
good?
Yeah, little coffee.
Little coffee.
Yeah.
Well,
Little latte.
providing some fuel for an insanely awesome conversation. Our guest tonight is going to be incredible. Some of the things that he's written about are big interests of ours.
Sure.
So we're gonna hop into all that. But first, I wanted to thank Stoner and Master Control and each and every one of you guys. You got to make sure hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. All the super chats and super stickers are live right now here in the premiere. And we appreciate all you guys listening out there. Let's get ready to bring in our guest. We have author, researcher, Rick Vooght. Rick, what's going on? How are you? Pen name RN Vooght. If you guys maybe have seen some of his stuff out there, but welcome. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for the invitation, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to connect. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's get crazy.
We've already had a great chat like we do. We usually spend sometimes too much time in the pre-chat, but it allows us to get loose and fired up for what we're about to dive into. So you have a really intense story about some things that happened to you and kind of how it shifted your life into this direction. Do you want to maybe start there and tell us about, and then we can get into all your books and whatever we want to do, but I think you just have a really cool story.
Thank you. Yeah, one that I guess I wasn't ready for myself, to be fair. Yeah, my first book, Spirit in the Sky, was actually published in 2017, but preempting the particular publication of The Spirit in the Sky, I was working, I still work as a security officer, but yeah, in 2010, 11, and 12, I was working for the European Space Agency, overseeing the launch of Ariane 5 spacecraft and Russian Soyuz satellite missions from the South American jungle. And I used to talk about a lot of my research because I've been studying ancient cosmologies for, I guess, ever since I found the work of Graham Hancock back in around 94, 95, when he released the I'm having a brain fart now.
Fingerprints of the Gods.
Fingerprints of the Gods. Yeah. Wow, I needed a seatbelt for reading that the first time round, let alone the second and third. But it completely opened up a whole new world of prehistory and I guess the future of humanity to me, really. And I just started to kind of question everything, you know. And yeah, as I say, that I first picked that up in the mid to late 90s, and crikey, I was probably reading 2, maybe 3 books a day for the best part of 10 years. And I really wanted to bring something to the party, let's say, but I wanted it to be new. I didn't want to be kind of churning out other people's research and kind of rehashing it and reworking it just to get kind of sales and bits and pieces. And it still blows my mind how everything kind of fell into place, because the guys I would talk to in the clean rooms when I was assembling these satellites in both the UK and the south of France, the guys I would work with would say to me, look, dude, you've got to write this stuff down. You've got to publish some of this stuff. You're blowing our brains literally nightly. But I was working sort of back-to-back 12-hour shifts, sort of 5 or 6 shifts, 1 or 2 days off. No real sort of downtime or whatever. And in fairness, it was probably the greatest job I ever had. And yeah, I just kind of wanted it to continue. But I was struck by, I guess, an air of misfortune when we were actually launching one particular spacecraft from French Guiana in South America. And I actually fell from quite a height in the jungle on the launch pad and shattered my back. And I was literally, it was quite horrific, to be fair. And I was flown home within sort of 48 hours. I was misdiagnosed a number of times. I had a couple of failed microdiscectomies on my back. I was told that basically I've got a phantom. I've got a phantom pain in my back now because I've been sort of walking around for 2 or 3 years with this pain, and I need to create new neurological pathways in my brain. And I'm like, dude, slow down. What do you mean? To an extent, I felt a little bit crazy, and I wasn't accepting that was kind of legit, you know. So I went private, got like a second and third opinion, and I said, look, I don't know how the guys have missed this before. I don't know why you've gone through 2 microdiscectomies, but basically, if we don't operate on your lower back pretty much next week, there's a chance that if you don't have this operation in the next 10 years, you're going to be kind of wheelchair bound, and you're not going to be, you're not going to be able to walk again. So obviously that scared the absolute bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
I underwent the surgery. I now have a huge titanium cage in my lower back with nuts and bolts and all sorts in there. I spent the best part of a year learning to walk again, and I was kind of unemployable for, I guess, 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer, just because of my ongoing back problems, and learning to walk and what have you. It was very, very hard to fall back into, excuse the pun, fall back into the industry that I was in, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And that was where I basically found the downtime to kind of either sit there and feel sorry for myself or use this rehab time to actually put pen to paper and write the spirit in the sky. And the I guess you can call them coincidences, you can call them synchronicities regarding sort of how the first publication came about. But if I hadn't have gone through it myself, I probably wouldn't have believed it. My editor actually said to me, what do you want from this first publication, from Spirit in the Sky? How far do you think it can go? Where do you think it will go? And what do you want from it? And I said, look, Adam, with all due respect, it would be wonderful just to have someone like Graham Hancock to find my writing on the radar. And if I can get a kind of a nod in the right direction from a heavyweight in that kind of alternative history media, then that's like all my birthdays and Christmases kind of come together, you know. And Adam said to me, look, you got to remember there's a lot of people putting a lot of material out there, and Hancock only has sort of, obviously there's only 12 months in a year, there's only one author of a month, monthly. It's going to be a hard slog, but yeah, I've got your back on it, and let's try and make this happen. And literally within 2 months, I received an email from Team Hancock saying, we've read the work, we love it. Would you like to write an article? And we'd like to offer you the slot for author of the month in 2017.
Awesome.
And it absolutely blew me away. It absolutely blew me away. But even prior to that actually happening, my editor said to me again, what do you want from this? I said, I'd like to change the world. And if you don't believe that you're going to play a small, crucial role in changing the world, no matter how large or how small, if you don't believe that you've got that, then you're not going to be one of them guys to do it, you know? So I backed my own authority and sense of this has the ability to make, if it doesn't change the world as a whole, but it changes someone's world, then I'll feel kind of really fulfilled, you know? And as we would get into, the crux of my research comes down to psychedelics and excuse me, constellations. And on the eve of actually publishing The Spirit in the Sky, and I have done this almost every night since, when obviously the cycles of the stars permit, during the winter months of the year, I actually talked to the constellation of Orion. And as crazy as it sounds, I do genuinely feel that this particular constellation, or whatever it is that's going up in the cosmos, actually sometimes speaks back to you, and it kind of gives me these little kind of breadcrumbs in which to follow. And when I when I'm following them and picking them up, I kind of find they're like little pieces to a puzzle, and it's mind blowing the way it works. And if I hadn't have experienced it myself, I'd never have believed it. And when I initially published it, I spoke to Orion and I said I'd love to change the world, and maybe my chance has been missed with regards to becoming a father. I've always wanted to become a father, but I didn't want to bring a child into such a bitter and kind of hateful world, you know. But thought, you know what, if this book can change the world for just one person, then maybe I'm ready to be a dad, and let's do this. Let's make you famous again, Osiris, Orion, or however you want to be called. Let's do this. So I've hit the publish button, and my girlfriend at the time, she came back from work that evening. She said, "How'd it get on? Did you publish it? Is it gone live?" I said, "Yep. Half hour ago, it's out there, and the world's going to find out about this myth of Osiris from a scientific perspective, and maybe it will change the world, you know." And she said, "That's wonderful, but I've got some more news for you." I said, "Okay, go on. Are we breaking up? What's going on?" She said,
boy,
"No, you
here it
might want to sit down for this one." I said, "Okay, what's going on?" She said, "I'm pregnant."
Hello.
And I was like, I've had a conversation with myself and the sky, no more than like less than an hour prior, saying, "No, I'm ready to be a dad." And I thought that publishing this book was going to be one of the most important steps in my life, you know. But then my girlfriend comes back no less than half an hour later and says, "Congratulations on your book, fantastic, but also congratulations, you're going to be a dad."
Wow.
And the craziness didn't really stop there, because when my son Bodhi was actually born 9 months later, 8 months later, or what have you, I was obviously walking on air. There were no complications or anything per se. And my girlfriend said to me, "I've left something at home. Do you mind sort of going to collect it?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. I'm a nervous wreck at the moment. I'm in no sort of frame of mind to drive, so I'm gonna book a cab. So I'll get a taxi." I jump in a taxi. The taxi driver asks all the usual questions: "How you doing? What are you up to?" La di da, my dad. And I said, "Look, with all due respect, my friend, I don't want to be rude, but right now I just want to exhale and just hear some music. I just want to clear my mind a little bit. Do you mind putting the radio on?" And he said to me, "Yeah, no problem. Any particular channel?" I said, "The first one that comes on, I'm happy. Whatever you want to listen to." He switches the radio on, and what's playing? The Spirit in the Sky. And it absolutely blew. I mean, I just started to cry. I was thinking, how can this even be possible? You know, how can this be possible? It was such a contrasting domino effect of synchronicities that led up to not just the release of Spirit in the Sky, but the birth of my son. And I guess the ball kept on rolling from there on out, if you know what I mean. And I genuinely believe that the Spirit in the Sky, ancient cosmological gods, and where in the world we find them, would kind of be a bit of a mic drop moment, that I'd leave it at that. There's my piece. I'm going to walk away and kind of, just enjoy researching still, and reading the works of your Hancocks and Scrantons and whatever. But probably not pen another book. But the way everything was kind of exploded in my face there on after, it it was nigh on impossible for me to not write part 2, Deities, Myth and Trixmeans, and then part 3, which I published a couple of years ago, Searching for Osiris. And even when the trilogy dropped, it was kind of, man, that's it. That's kind of boxed up. No, that's kind of nice and compartmentalized. I'll leave it at that. But for untoward reasons, the rabbit hole just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm hoping to publish part 4, Entheogens in Antiquity, later on this year. So I'm really looking forward to putting it all out there, guys.
Man, that's awesome. I think that subject's getting really popular, psychedelics and ancient history. If I always said, if I had Graham on, the thing that I would like to talk to him most is about his work in psychedelics and ancient history. Because, we don't get to have, we've had a couple DMT researchers on from the Netherlands, and they're both Maastricht University, and they're doing all kinds of amazing work with DMT and these those helmets that they wear, the photon grids that they put on their heads.
I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, what are those called? But they're, you know, plugged into these machines and computer softwares, and they're kind of priming these experiences and then looking at the brain. And so we've had some very scientific episodes about the subject. So we're excited to hop into this. No doubt.
Absolutely.
I noticed your shirt. You have the DMT molecule on your shirt there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't have the website yet, but the website is up and running. It's actually linked to my Instagram and Twitter accounts as well. So
Nice.
there's a number of merchandise on there that kind of relates loosely and quite heavily regarding the research. But in fairness, DMT was never really on my radar, guys, up until crikey. I had my 49th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I was a child of sort of growing up in the rave scene in the 90s in the UK. And with the greatest respect, I thought I was kind of privy to most recreational or psychedelic chemical compounds that there were to sort of mess around with. But yeah, DMT was never on my radar. And yeah, when I first saw the Rick Strassman documentary, The Spirit Molecule, which is narrated, as you probably guys have seen as well, by Joe Rogan, not only did it blow me away, but the first time that I actually saw the molecular structure of DMT, I just had an overwhelming familiarity with it. I was like, damn, man, where have I seen that before? I swear. And it felt like it was kind of stuck in my zeitgeist of existence, you know? And it was like almost like a cold bucket ice water challenge, you know? It just kind of hit me, and I was like, man, I think I know it can't be. It can't be. I've stopped the DVD. I've gone walking down to the beach. Excuse me. Made myself nice and comfortable. It's a cool evening. Winter's just approaching, and my mind's racing in a million different directions about what I've just seen regarding the entheogenic properties of this chemical compound that appears to be hardwired to the human brain. I'm thinking, I know I've seen this. I know I've seen this, and it was almost cinematic, you know, like literally the clouds parted and there was Orion. And I'm like, damn. Okay. All of a sudden, the myth of Osiris, my research from ancient cosmologies, especially Egyptian cosmology and the god of resurrection, Osiris, it just hit me. I'm like, dude, I get it. I think this might be what the entire mythology may in fact be about. There's something extremely profound and extremely scientific behind this particular mythology. And yeah, I guess we can dive into it if you guys are ready.
Let's do it. I didn't realize that you were connecting the star system and what the visual image looks like with the molecule of DMT. So this is okay. I'm in.
It's wild, guys. It's absolutely wild. So just to kind of break this down a little bit, the myth of Osiris, crikey, where do we start? It basically starts at a banquet that's been organized by Osiris's wicked or evil brother, known as Set or Seth, depending on which sources from Egyptian mythology you kind of pluck in your resources from. But everyone's at this banquet, and they're asked by Seth or Set that all the guests can take their turns in lying down in this wonderfully ornate wooden coffin. And whoever befits it the most can, in fact, keep it. So guest after guest, they keep trying, but their dimensions are either too short, too tall, too wide, or what have you, until the turn of Osiris. Osiris duly lays down inside the casket, and it fits him perfectly. It's the proverbial glove, you know. But to the stunned guests' amazement, Seth and his cohorts fasten Osiris inside this coffer with a lid, carry it from the banquet, and toss it into the Nile.
Wow!
Where it floats for a number of days, a number of nights, where it eventually runs ashore in modern-day Lebanon, known as Byblos back then. And Byblos is where we get the word for the Bible, because it's where the original papyrus was pressed for the pages of the Bible. And I won't go into it too much at the moment, but I think there's an ayahuasca analog in there somewhere with regards to the pressing of these particular reeds, excuse me, to create this papyrus. But this copper runs ashore, runs aground, and for reasons unknown, Osiris becomes further entombed within the trunk of a resplendent tamarisk tree on the banks of Byblos, and this trunk grows around the casket, and it's the most beautiful looking resplendent acacia tree that anyone's ever seen. And the king of Byblos orders the felling of this particular tree, as he wants it to be crafted into a pillar and hung in the walls of his palace, which he does. And Isis, which is Osiris's sister and wife, actually gets wind of this, and she bargains with the king of Byblos to actually set Osiris free from his untimely grave. The king agrees, and Osiris is then freed from within inside this acacia trunk, and he then became synonymous as the lifeblood of the acacia. But Seth was completely enraged by this, and he decided to dispatch of Osiris for a second time, and he chops him up into a number of pieces. It's either 14 or 42 pieces, again depending on your sources, excuse me, and scatters his body parts across ancient Egypt, whereby Osiris's his spiritual essence, is then raised up into the cosmos, where he becomes further synonymous and identified with the constellation of Orion. So we've now got kind of conflicts in mythologies whereby Osiris is either considered the lifeblood of the acacia, or indeed he's the macrocosmic namesake of a constellation, probably the world's most famous constellation in the night sky. Now, either he's in the heavens, or he's the lifeblood of the acacia. But if we decide to look at this particular mythology for a more, I guess, scientific lens, what we find is that within the sap, or indeed the lifeblood of the acacia, we find the chemical, the psychedelic chemical compound N,N-dimethyltryptamine, whose 2D molecular structure appears to reflect rather profoundly as Orion in the night sky. So hence we have the proverbial as above, so below, which is mind-blowing in saying the least. But a lot of people they say, well, okay, this is all coincidence, you know. Okay, I've got no problem calling it coincidence, but the myth kind of deepens. We remember Osiris being extracted from the acacia and becoming synonymous as the gatekeeper to the other world and the original God, loose air quotes, of resurrection, just like Jesus from Christianity. And there's a number of I guess, allegorical and symbolical associations whereby Osiris and Jesus, the God of resurrection, may be considered the same kind of entity, regardless of whether they were real people or not. I mean, that's an argument that a lot of people like to kind of start online. But again, like I say, I'm not trying to sort of poo-poo anyone's religion, and I'm saying you can kind of run with this or run away from it. But when you kind of look at these mythologies for a more scientific lens, there's a lot more you can prove via science instead of, I guess, from word of mouth, compiled from a book compiled by minds of Middle Eastern men that were all called John, Matthew, Luke, and David, and what have you. if they've changed the names of, I guess, the lead characters or central characters in the Bible, what else have they changed? You know, and the Bible does state on a number of occasions that these are the words of riddles of the wise. You know, the dark sayings. Everything here is allegorical per se. And it's just a matter of learning, I guess, to read between them proverbial lines, to kind of get to the nuts and bolts of what these people were trying to kind of describe to us. Excuse me. But what we find is that we've got these gods of resurrection. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up and down. These gods of resurrection. But what does that really tell us? I guess for 2,000 years, we haven't seen anyone risen from the dead per se again, albeit a god or a demigod. But what we find is that the chemical entheogenic compound DMT does, in fact, and it's scientifically accepted as well, that it actually tricks your brain into a death-like state of mind before actually launching your consciousness into an otherworldly, I guess, reality from which you somewhat return metaphysically resurrected with new eyes in which to kind of see the world around you. And it's, yeah, there appears to be an otherworldly mindscape that is just beyond the regular tools, I guess, of our ocular capacity, without the introduction or without introducing more DMT past the blood-brain barrier, more than which the brain would produce in itself. Nobody actually knows whereabouts DMT is produced in the brain. It's been hypothesized that it might be the pineal gland, but we know that the pineal gland, which we can get to later on in the presentation or what have you, is described in the Bible as well, via when Jacob witnessed in the face of God in the place that he called Peniel. We know that Jesus is meant to be the light of the world, and he says, when thine eye be single, thy body shall be filled with light. We understand that the pineal gland itself is the light receptor of the body, no less. And I guess the coincidences, loose air quote, continues. So I'd like to bring up right now, if I can, I'm going to get rid of all of this jargon at the bottom here, and I would like you to be able to see the imagery that I've actually got on the screen, where I'm actually putting a comparative description of the constellation of Orion alongside a 2D molecular structure of DMT as well, and how this particularly shapes, I guess, the next kind of verses from the allegorical mythology of Osiris. Because, excuse me, I'll just take a quick drink. It was brought to my attention after publishing The Spirit in the Sky with regard to this 2D rendition of Osiris in the sky, albeit the molecular structure of DMT that we find within the sap or the lifeblood of the Acacia. It was brought to my attention that it's not a carbon copy, although it's pretty damn close. Although the bottom part of the molecular structure of DMT is what's known as the indole-benzene ring, and it's more of a hexagonal structure as opposed to what we see in the night sky with regards to, I guess, more of a trapezium of what we're seeing at the bottom half of the constellation of Orion. But this is where it gets really, really interesting, because if we connect the dots, as I believe should be intended, we actually find, excuse me, I've just come down a little bit too quick there. Can you see my cursor on the screen here, just circling beneath it?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Okay, so directly below the constellation of Orion, we have a constellation known as the Hare or the Rabbit, which the Greeks named Lepus, and the ancient Egyptians themselves called Wenet. Okay, and there's some rather eye-opening star names within this particular plethora of stars within this constellation of Lepus, albeit Wenet. So we find, continuing the myth of Osiris and what's known as the mysteries of Abydos, we find that Osiris was to set foot upon what is known as the cosmic barge. And it's also known that the cosmic barge is also described as the Neshmet, okay? So if we decide to actually expand this rather ill-fitting trapezium of Osiris, albeit Orion, at the bottom of the constellation of Orion, into the rabbit's head, we find something quite eye-opening, because the second brightest star within that particular star grouping is actually called Mulaporis, and the Egyptians themselves identified it as the Neshmet. So if we, again, metaphorically speaking, connect these proverbial dots in the sky, and we draw a line down from Osiris's foot, albeit the constellation of the bottom right hand corner of the constellation of Orion, onto the Neshmet, and we also do the same with his other foot onto the brightest star in the constellation, known as Alpha Leporis, we actually create something extremely eye-opening. And I'm going to get to this image above this in two seconds, because we find we've now set foot, as per the mythology, Osiris is now standing aboard the proverbial Neshmet, which is meant to carry him across the Nile, okay, throughout the mysteries of Abydos. So what we've effectively done is we've now erased the rather ill-fitting trapezium, continued the myth of Osiris as intended, and joined them proverbial dots. And it appears to have created the hexagonal indole benzene ring of the molecular structure of DMT. And in doing so, we're actually connecting the dots whereby Osiris has now been assimilated aboard the Neshmet, as the mythology says. But the intriguing thing that we find with this is that when Osiris is assimilated, he's actually discussed as a hare-headed deity. So we're talking about just the head of this particular deity, the head of the rabbit. And when we connect the Osiris with the head of the rabbit, as we've just seen on the other imagery, we then complete the correct chemical formula for the hexagonal indole benzene ring for N-dimethyltryptamine. But it gets, again, I've been told that might be a coincidence, and that's fabulous. You can run with that. I've got no problem with that. But as we can see, we've still got the typified hexagonal benzene ring, which was otherwise missing from the constellation of Orion. But now we've connected Osiris's namesake, or he's synonymous with Wenet, the rabbit's head, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever unless we are connecting these, I guess, proverbial dots in the sky. But rather intriguingly, what we actually find is, I'm going to come down here to the next imagery. If we continue to actually follow this mythology and follow it correctly, with regard to the rabbit's head being connected to complete this indole benzene ring, we actually find there's a star directly beneath Alpha Leporis, known as Beta Leporis, which the ancient Egyptians and oops, can you hear me? I just lost my mic.
Yeah, I still got you.
Yep.
Fantastic. Which the ancient Egyptians and ancient Sanskrit writings actually describe as Nile, believe it or not. And okay, Nile is spelled a little bit differently. The phonetics are the same, but through ancient Sanskrit mythology and cosmology, Nile is a name which bears the meaning of joyfulness. Now, in following or connecting these proverbial dots in the sky, once again, we actually create the chemical neurotransmitter serotonin, whose basically its job is being secreted via the pineal gland, is to create the overriding feeling or sensation within the human brain or body of joyfulness.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Either I'm seeing a hell of a lot of loose air quotes coincidences, or we're following a methodical and scientific path in the sky whereby we're connecting the dots as the mythology is asking us to, and we're looking at the translations and we're looking at the translations of these particular star names that appear to be almost rubber stamping the notion of what the entire thesis is about. To find that the one single star that makes all this happen, regarding the neurotransmitter serotonin being joyfulness, the star name being Nile, and Nile meaning joyfulness. I think that's almost one coincidence too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there has to be a common train of thought where someone somewhere, I'm not saying it's the ancient Egyptians, it might be, but I think that somewhere prior to the ancient Egyptians and being 5,000 BC, 3,000 BC through to, I guess, 500 AD, however you look at it. I think someone somewhere had kind of worked out or had an idea of what the molecular structure of this God-inducing entheogenic chemical compound that we produce in our brain and is littered throughout nature. I think they've stitched together, in my mind at least anyway, almost like that proverbial trail of breadcrumbs again, as if to say, look, if you keep picking these up and connecting the dots in the right place, and you know or have an idea of what these molecular structures actually look like within the Acacia, then quite possibly you could have not the key, but a proverbial key to opening higher realms of consciousness that may in fact lie dormant within the human brain, and probably have for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And I find it absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, you see a lot of, there's different DMT art that people have come up with, and there's a lot of like ox-headed beings, horse-headed beings, these different entities that people will see. And then you look at the art in Egypt, and it's, a dog-headed Anubis, and it's all these kind of half man, half animal beings. And it's like, well, it's really weird how that's shows up as modern day reports, and you
Absolutely
look at all the different beings that are in rock art and cave art, and it does seem like, were they really being visited by aliens, or were they tripping their balls off in a cave?
I think a lot of it's just
absolutely
people were doing things that we do today back then, but they were also, again, the sky, there wasn't light pollution. They looked at the stars and moon and celestial bodies, and they mapped them all out. And I was thinking the whole time you were saying this, I listened to another podcast recently where they made the point that Sturgill Simpson makes in one of his songs that how can we make something illegal we all hold in our brain?
We're all holding.
Everybody has DMT coursing through their bodies in multiple organs, and it's in all kinds of plant material. It's basically everywhere. And then you see it in the sky like that. And the only thing I could think the whole time was, are we... Because, okay, if you take DMT, you kind of break through the reality that we're in, and you get to see, like, I would almost say, from what I've heard, it's kind of like if you look behind the interface of a computer, and instead of what's being shown on the screen, you can see all the craziness of how it's being generated to the screen. But what if, since we're all comprised of this chemical in a certain way, and we don't really understand fully why we have receptors for that in cannabis and et cetera, what if that's what's creating our reality? And when you take it, it's like basically it's a chemical disruptor. To even go back to the Matrix references, when you take the red or blue pill, that's what it is. It's a chemical disruptor, right? That gets them out of the Matrix. It disturbs them so they can then be located and extracted out of it. So if you take DMT or some of these substances, again, are you just basically, it's not even a drug, right? If you follow me right, it's not even a drug. What it's doing is stopping the drug. It's kind of like the Leary acid test in reverse. So basically, if you think about it, we're all on DMT every day, potentially, right? Is what I'm saying. 100%. And if we interrupt 100%. It, you can see behind what's being projected onto our screens. But I couldn't help but think that when you started making the comparisons, especially when you drew the bottom part, and it really rounded out the chemical structure, it was like, that's pretty wild. Like, is the universe looking back at us in a certain way because we are,
Right.
you know, the connectedness of it all, and yeah.
That
Yeah.
and
And
psilocybin, the molecular structure of psilocybin's so close to DMT, it's so close to serotonin. They
Oh.
all look very similar, except there's a little extra on psilocybin that's like a little hook that comes off of it. But
absolutely. And we can touch on that now as well. It's a valid point, and I'm glad the timing of you bringing that particular point up as well, because what happens if we decide to marry Osiris with his wife Isis in the sky? Yeah. Bearing in mind, just like Osiris, Isis herself is actually considered to be a gatekeeper to the other world. And there's a lot of mythology there, or a lot of baggage that, again, I think is allegorical by nature, that's actually associated with his wife Isis. She's known as a goddess of fertility, which is correct, a goddess of life, a healer of the sick. She's meant to be a keeper of a myriad of like 1 million magical incantations, which kind of gives you pause for thought, you know, what might be going on here. But Isis in Egyptian mythology was also synonymous with Sirius and Venus because of their extraordinary luminescence. Now, history has it, like it's on the screen here, is that they were thence named Phosphorus and Lucifer, as in the light bringer. Now, phosphorus is an essential chemical compound vital to the production of proteins needed for the human bone growth in the human body. Without it, we wouldn't exist. But what happens, again, when we marry and connect these particular dots in the sky, if we decide to marry Orion with Isis in the sky, we actually create psilocybin.
Ah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Very
Wow,
interesting.
that's wild, dude.
Again.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you the only
And
guy that's putting this together? Because this seems unique. Very
There's
unique.
a temple. There's a temple in Philae, I think it's called, in Dendera, that's actually completely attributed to the goddess Isis, and the pillars themselves actually look like giant mushrooms. If you bear with me, I can actually find this on the screen for you.
I mean, there's mushroom art all over the Vatican, all over Christian paintings. It's all over so many ancient. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Of course.
That's pretty cool.
Well, you know, the story of Moses and the burning bush, a lot of people think that maybe was an acacia tree, the burning bush itself, and that was a visionary state of some kind. The Egyptians venerated the blue lotus flower. You know, potentially the flower itself contains it does contain massive amounts of DMT. So were they using Syrian rue in with
100% they were using Syrian rue because there's a dwarf god known as Bes, and it was only come to light probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago. But there was a couple of scientific papers that were coming out, just as I've said in Searching for Osiris, regarding this dwarf god Bes being linked and associated to DMT. They've actually now found Peganum Hamala infused on a number of the artifacts and ancient vases that are or depictions of this dwarf god Bes.
Yeah. And that's a harmine. That's a harmine that is basically like the other aspect. The vine in ayahuasca is like Syrian
that's exactly
rue.
it. The MOIA,
It's
the
just
monoamine oxidase,
allowing you to take it orally and have an extended, longer experience.
Exactly that. And it's absolutely fascinating.
Even taking that as a tea without anything, boy, it really gives you this really great perspective of, hey, everything's cool. Everything is pretty chill. Like there's something it does to your brain that just allows you to not really get worked up about stupid things, like somebody cutting you off in traffic, or you're kind of just like, yeah, I feel pretty good about it all.
Yeah. 100%, crikey. I mean, I was a courier for quite some time, and I used to not get road rage, but I'd be kind of a bit pissed off when someone would cut me up for no reason and this, that, and the other. But then again, becoming privy to an understanding of DMT, and I guess having new eyes in which to kind of see the world around us. Everyone's kind of subject to circumstance. You know, the guy that's just cut me up and acted like a complete dickhead on the highway. No, that guy might have just had a phone call 20 minutes ago saying that his wife or his son's just had an accident and this, that, and the other. And like, damn it, I'd be driving like Mad Max just to get to the hospital. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So them things don't wind me up anymore. They don't wind me up anymore. But just while we're still on the constellation part of this particular mythology, when Osiris actually gets assimilated to this rabbit-headed deity, when we incorporate the rabbit's head into what is now appears to be the indole benzene ring of the molecular structure of N,N-dimethyltryptamine. What we actually find out through the mythology is that Osiris himself and Wennet become assimilated again, and they actually become known as Sahu. And Sahu, man, the etymology behind Sahu is absolutely crazy. Or the etymology, the mythology behind him is crazy, because Sahu is actually known as the father of the gods, but he's also known as the hidden one, just like DMT has been, I guess, hidden in the constellation of Orion, and DMT is somewhat hidden, if not extracted via, it's an extraction process, the entire mythology, where Isis rescues, loose air quotes again, Osiris from within inside the lifeblood of the Acacia. But he's also known as the incorruptible soul. And anyone that's privy to a DMT experience will understand what the connotations there are, because I'm not saying that I was or wasn't scared to die. No one wants to die, but we've all got to face it. You know, no one's going to live forever. But once you become kind of privy to the DMT experience, the DMT realm, the dome, or the breakthrough experience, whatever you want to call it, there's a number of sort of wilder connotations of what this may or may not be. But you certainly, the people I've spoken to and myself from my own experience, I definitely feel like my soul is incorruptible. Like the meat and bones, the flesh and blood of me is just kind of a vessel, you know. Like Hancock has said with regards to a wireless transmission, maybe it's our consciousness that is actually tapping in, albeit via the pineal gland or whether it is in the human brain, as an antenna to actually access and almost use this body, this meat suit, in order to walk around this three-dimensional terrestrial plane that we all call waking reality, you know. But what we also find is that Sahu is also known as the beautiful renewal. And it came to my attention about 4 or 5 years ago. Another medical paper had come out talking about how DMT actually is responsible for growing, if not connecting, new neurological pathways within the human brain. So
I could buy that.
There's talk that somewhere down the line, with regards to people with like EpiPens, they can be brought out of a potentially fatal situation via these EpiPens. There's talk now that not just an endogenous boost, but an external boost of DMT may in fact stop people with, let's say, that are going through Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and the like. And that will essentially, rather beautifully, renew these chemical freeways or connections in the brain. And the brain doesn't necessarily have to die because of an aging process or an ill-fitting neurological process that you've been born with, or you've just had the misfortune of finding out that you've got this illness that's kind of going to take you to the grave. But DMT appears to as I say, shape up and regrow these new neurological pathways in the brain. So it's a wonderful time to be alive with regards to the future of science and medicine, regarding what we can only call one of the world's most highly illicit chemical compounds known to man. Yet,
Yeah.
as you've quite rightly said as well, Sturgill says it, how can you make illegal something that we make in our brain?
Right.
We're all carried.
Right. We've also talked
carried.
to another researcher who said something similar to, just in psychedelic vein with mushrooms and psilocybin, et cetera, that, if you have, say you're an alcoholic or you smoke cigarettes or whatever your vice or pattern is, taking those psilocybin treatments that basically breaks you out of that patternistic thinking. And like you're saying with Alzheimer's and all, it's a pattern that eventually starts to shape up. And maybe if you can alter that pattern or give it lifeblood to generate new patterns that I think you're seeing a lot of that push too in the psychedelic research into the pharmaceutical side, where they're trying to really rush to that forefront right now to make therapeutics for the wider market. Like, it's wild to think that, holy cow, we're at this moment. Like, you couldn't talk about psychedelics, 25 years ago without being thrown off a cliff or something. People be like, oh, you're crazy. Like, that's for crazy people. It's like, you're starting to find all of these benefits now. And it's like,
and cures things.
Man,
that they don't want that. It cures.
I don't even know that it cures. I don't know. I don't know that we've gotten that far with it. I mean, it can help treat a lot of things, but curatively, I mean, again, I think it helps break you out. There'll probably be a lot of applications from it that we don't even fully understand yet, but I think it's just a big step that, there's always this push-pull. Like, back in the 70s, and especially when probably the CIA had their hands in it too, and they were really pushing out the psychedelics, they pushed it so hard that it got such a negative connotation that everybody's like, shut that down.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, we really just set ourselves back.
We did.
By a number of years by not being just more measured and going, okay, let's keep developing this, but maybe we don't need to go so hard with it. Maybe we don't need to, let's push the limits slowly but surely. They didn't go from rock climbing to base jumping right away. They went from rock climbing to better rock climbing to better rock climbing to then we'll do this and then we'll do that. It wasn't, there was a bigger leap there. And I think now that we're getting back to actually working to develop these, and again, the broader societal groups that have never even heard of psychedelics or even thought about it, now this might be something that they could actually have access to. And what a way to really get the world consciousness up to speed if everybody's like, oh, hey, I just realized the same thing that a lot of other people have realized, or I've really, dropped this part of my ego, or whatever you want to say. Like, there's a lot of workshop that can go on in there.
100%. And I think that the likes of the Reagan administration in the mid 80s that were just saying, no, stay away from these, everything was demonized. And that's almost 40 years ago. Where are we going to be in 40 years from today, when we understand what DMT's potential may or may not be regarding these medical breakthroughs for things like Alzheimer's and what have you. It's it's quite upsetting, to be fair.
I always thought maybe Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. My mother had Parkinson's. She had a whole lot of diseases. She passed almost over 10 years ago now, but I always thought, is it possible that Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these things are symptoms of not taking psychedelics? It's like those receptors that you have, that if you're not utilizing that system, that it's somehow atrophying, and then it kind of, leads into bigger and bigger problems like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. Like, are we actually supposed to be taking psychedelics as a regimented vitamin almost, or it's interesting.
Maybe not in so much just maybe not in so much just taking them, but at the end of the day, if our brains, like we don't know where, but if our brain is naturally producing N,N-dimethyltryptamine, and I mean, I think it's been found out recently as well that there's trace elements of bufotenine and 5-MeO-DMT being found in the human brain as well.
Oh wow.
Who's to say that the people that are actually suffering from these Parkinson's, these Alzheimer's, maybe they're not producing the amount of DMT that their body should be. Hence, their brains are actually breaking down and having these problems and symptoms, And if we can introduce more N,N-dimethyltryptamine past the blood-brain barrier, who's to say that it might not be a one-stop shop like, dude, we can cure you. We can cure you.
Right. We just don't have the
and you don't
research.
necessarily.
We don't have the data.
And it's crazy because it's been demonized for decades. It's like you get caught carrying DMT, it's like 20 years in prison. It's like, what? Come on, dude. Okay, it might be in a little bag or a little pipe there, but right now it's in my eyes, it's in my lungs, it's in my cerebral spinal fluid, it's in my brain. Damn, there's more on me than there is in this pipe. Do the math.
Right.
It's absolutely wild. It's absolutely crazy.
What if the DMT part is the kind of like, the Edgar Cayce, the reincarnation, the soul of the body? And again, you're talking about, say, like Alzheimer's patients or even people just where maybe that's getting low at the end of their life or what have you. But again, I can't get this thought out of my head that maybe they call it the spirit molecule, right? So what if, that is the part of it? Like when you lose that entropy, that DMT kind of goes back out into or your energy or your spirit. And then when you reincarnate or, there's a lot of examples of people living past lives or recalling, being a World War II fighter pilot at the age of 3. This kid's like, oh, I was a World War fighter pilot. And they're like, what? Like, and they'll have very, they know exactly the story of the person they say they were before. And I've never experienced it. I've never had any flashback like that, but I could see that being it again because, we all have this question of where do we go when we move on and where does our energy and our spirit and maybe that's entangled with it. Maybe that's what the Egyptians were saying within the sky as above, so below. And maybe that's a transcommunication.
I don't think that's, I don't think that, a lot of people like to throw that out really, really quite quickly, but like Graham Hancock says, why throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Right.
There's testimonials of people coming, I don't know, being in like 2, 3, 5 year comas, and then awaking from the coma, and they speak fluent Japanese. Like I've never left the British Isles, or they're then playing Bach on a piano.
Yeah,
that's just it's a symphony, Yet they've never sat in front of a piano in their lives,
So that's acquired savant syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's I think that might be a number of like maybe 10 or more people in the world currently or ever like have had, but I know exactly what you're talking about. You might take a knock on the head or this or that. And next thing you know, you're solving mathematics or, really complex physics problems. And you're like, I'm a bartender that, slugs back a couple beers a day and has some smokes, but I don't, hit the mathematics and the physics, and that's really interesting. Cause how can you have that just turn on? Right.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Even if you've never been exposed to it, how do you just have some injury and then next thing you know, your brain is this supercomputer? And that's where that's really fascinating. You say that too, because that's another just complex portion of how our minds can work. And we have all that power in the world to access it. We just don't know how to do it sometimes.
100%, 100%. I can't plumb at the top of my mind at the moment. It's another ancient Greek mythology. It might be from Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory, but talking about, I guess, reincarnation or living lives over and over. It's been said in one of the ancient mythologies that the philtrum between the nose and the lip is where the ancient goddess Mnemosyne, when you're actually being reborn again, it's where she purses her lips and says, "Shh, you're not going to remember." But
what? That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But Mnemosyne as well is actually loosely. You're all familiar with kind of deviating a little bit. We'll get back on track, but you're all familiar with the mythology of Pegasus, right? The flying horse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll try and find some imagery as well to make it a little bit clearer for you, but. I don't know about you guys. I've never seen a flying horse or a horse with wings.
Nope.
And I'm actually pulling this out of the back catalogue of research from the ex-pastor and modern day researcher, Bill Donohue. I don't know if you guys are aware of him. He's in his late 80s now. And I cite him quite heavily in DMT, deities, myth, and tryptamines regarding the Bible and, ancient mythology. But what we find with Pegasus was actually born of a union between Medusa and Poseidon. And
Interesting.
excuse me, Poseidon, we find, is the god of the sea, yeah? But he's also the god of horses, which might make Pegasus a seahorse, okay? Now, if we look at a seahorse, if we can see this,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
that seahorse on the left-hand side, or it might be flipped side round the way I'm holding the book, but that's right next to what is known as the hippocampus of the human brain.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Okay.
I'll be
Now,
damned.
hippocampus is Latin for seahorse.
Pardon?
Okay.
So
Hippocampus is Latin for seahorse.
this is getting weird. Because that's,
Okay.
I mean, it's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, but Pegasus was also he was held in high esteem by the goddess of memory, no less, Nemesis.
Right.
And it said the Pegasus's hoof kicked the fountain of Hippocrene so the waters of memory could flow. Now, if we actually look at an MRI of, I don't know how close you can see this,
I think you got to
but
move over.
just
There you go.
There we go.
Yep. Gotcha.
there,
Yep.
we can actually see what looks like a hoof.
Yep.
And that hoof is
Okay.
within the hippocampus of the human brain. But once again, horses don't have wings, do they? Now, the hippocampus is surrounded by what we know today as the cerebrum. Yeah. And the cerebrum is synonymous with the cherubim.
Okay.
Yeah. And the cherubim is shaped like the wings surrounding the hippocampus, albeit Pegasus, the seahorse.
You're making a lot of sense
And
here.
and we're actually told that, okay, I'm going to dip in and out here, but we're actually told that Jesus was crucified in a place called Golgotha. Golgotha translates as the skull. We're also told that that God is within the temple, or the house of God, and the wings of the cherubim touch the walls of the temple. Now, you obviously know that the human skull has temples, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these wings of the cherubim or the cerebrum actually touch the skull's temples.
Hmm.
And the job of the cherubim was to protect the throne or the house of God. But cerebrum
Wow.
is there to protect the human brainstem. And what we also find is that the human brainstem, alongside Jesus crucified,
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
What?
That makes sense.
I mean, that's pretty,
Makes
and then we
sense to
also
me.
find
right?
the original God of resurrection. We have the human
Pull
brainstem
it back a little
alongside.
bit, Rick. Pull it back just a little. There you go. Cool. There we go. Now it's
So we now have Osiris alongside the human brainstem as well, with the cerebral peduncles, with the crossed arms.
Yeah.
But just to kind of nail this home, why I think it was kind of a global understanding, we've got the Hindu deity known as Ganesh, and the underside of the human brain, we've got an elephant-headed deity and the human brain as well. And Ganesh was also known as the god of wisdom and intellect, which is
Yeah.
quite clearly associated with the human brain.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it was no longer was Spirit in the Sky mic drop, because I start talking about all this sort of stuff in the second book, DMT, Deities, Myth and Tryptamines. But this is where the myth of Osiris continues, because I don't know if you can see on your screen at the moment, there's actually a famous granite bust or statue depicting Ramesses being blessed by the earthly embodiment of the spirit of Osiris and the anthropomorphic deities we call Set and Horus. The legend has it that Horus's victorious battle with Set as the sun rises would see Set banished to the underworld until the sun rises once again. Set, however, would defeat his nemesis and overthrow Horus thereafter, and rule over the prevailing darkness until the sun rises. Now, again, like I say, in deities, myth, and tryptamines, we consider Osiris, his otherwise bizarre headdress, alongside the photoreceptors of the human brain and pineal gland. So just below this, at the bottom there, we've actually got a cross-section of a photoreceptor within the human eyes and the pineal gland, and a depiction of the alignment of photoreceptors. The chief photoreceptor having green skin, just like Osiris, and it has a conical white-capped headdress, just like Osiris. And just by way of kind of confirming what might be going on here, it makes more sense to envisage Horus as a metaphor for serotonin, which is secreted during the day, whereby Set would become a natural contender for this neurotransmitter's chemical counterpart, melatonin, which is secreted via the pineal gland during the hours of darkness. And it gets crazier still. It does get crazier still. So on screen now, we're talking about the son of Osiris, Horus, okay? Excuse me. Horus, we know, is a hawk-headed deity or a falcon-headed deity. And the smallest, the smaller pyramid of the much famed Giza Plateau, the correlation of as above, so below from Robert Temple and Bouval, and the alignment of the Great Pyramids to Orion's belt. We actually find that the smaller pyramid of the two, Menkura's pyramid, is actually also known to be dedicated to Horus, the falcon god. And its lower casing stone that we find, you don't see these casing stones all over ancient Egypt, but we do find them in Sacsayhuaman, Peru, on the South American continent. And rather bizarrely, Sacsayhuaman actually translates as place of the satisfied falcon. Now, rather bizarrely, or another loose air quotes coincidence, we find that the distance, excuse me, I'm going to jump back and forth here, from these sites is 7,920 miles, which is the diameter of the Earth, which is rather bizarre. So, yeah, I think that someone somewhere kind of worked out, I guess, the size of Earth and our place within the cosmos and the cycles of heaven, and kind of built in again these allegorical metaphors with regards to, guys, if you read between the lines here, there's some really profound information, you know?
Right.
Or again, you can do what the Egyptologists do and just kind of reject it as coincidence, poo-poo it and throw it away and say, look, close the book, we're moving on, which I think is kind of childish, to state the very, very least. But yeah, these correlations continue. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of Göbekli Tepe, right?
Yep.
In Turkey. Okay, so it transpires that Göbekli Tepe has also got an ancient Armenian namesake as well, which is Portasar. And Portasar itself actually translates as umbilical of Osiris, which is neither here nor there at the moment, but this is what we're about to get to. So there's, in ancient Egypt, let me get rid of this. It's not the one I'm after. In ancient Egypt, we've got the single most Osiris identifiable construction is actually known as the Osirian, okay? And here we go. Can you see this on my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. So the Osirian Abydos is an ancient Egyptian anomaly, typically dated to around 1250 BC. And many do believe it to be far older, due in part to it lying below the bedrock of Seti I's temple, which was constructed adjacent to it. And this is where it gets kind of mind-blowing, I guess, with regards to measurements made therein. Because the construction of the Osirian itself, it wouldn't look out of place should someone actually say to you, I guess from a screenshot looking down, if someone told you that it was in Tiwanaku in Bolivia, you'd think, yeah, okay, yeah, I buy that. quite clearly it's the same construction techniques, which is kind of crazy because Tiwanaku is actually like a compound word. We have Tiwa and Aku. Aku is actually a Egyptian phonetic, which actually means light. So let me back up here very, very quickly. We now have Göbekli Tepe, or Portasar, known as the umbilical of Osiris, and the distance between the umbilical of Osiris, Göbekli Tepe, to the Assyrian is precisely 864 miles. Okay. Now, the diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles. Okay. Now, the midway point between these two Osiris identifiable sites in antiquity is 432 miles. Okay, 432, which we'll get to in a minute. The crosshairs are no less than a mile away from Temple Mount, or Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem, which is where Muhammad was said to have ascended to the heavens, where Jesus saw his transfiguration of Christ into the light. It's the same location where Jacob said that he wrestled with God, saw the face of God, and survived, and he named that place Peniel. Okay, and we now know that the pineal gland is the light receptor of the body, and scientifically, it's actually known. In fact, if we have what is known as an epiphany, an inspirational download of insight from within the midst of one's mind's eye, albeit the pineal gland, an epiphany, the scientific word for the scientific naming of the pineal gland is the epiphysis cerebri, epiphysis and the epiphany. So it's like ancient mythology and science are also kind of talking about the same proverbial hymn sheet. So we've got the distance again between these Osiris identifiable sites being 864 miles. The crosshairs being in Peniel, or Peniel, the light receptor of the body, at being the midway point being 432 miles. 432 times 432 is 186,400, which is the speed of light in a vacuum. Now, just to back this up, the Bible, the biblical texts, talk about, or they refer to, the tribe of Judah, which is also known as the tribe of light. And the tribe of Judah were encamped on the eastern horizon, which we know is where the sun rises. How many people were there in the tribe of Judah, the tribe of light? 186,400.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Speed of light in a vacuum.
So I don't understand why can't they just... Is it purposeful to make it allegorical, to blend it instead of just writing a science text, or maybe they just didn't know how to do it and how to bring it to life?
It's
because
only for the initiates to know.
Is that what it's about? Like, because now we know the speed of light. So is it like, okay, well, they knew the speed of light back then somehow, but I don't know. I guess, like, right. But how much
mystery schools?
So you're familiar with the location of the pyramids, right? Yeah. And I think it's not the longitudinal, the latitudinal coordinates.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to get this just up here very, very quickly because I think I've got it, so I can break it down a little bit easier for you guys. But no, it's not actually on there. Okay. So the longitudinal coordinates for the Great Pyramid also equate to, which has been poo-pooed again by science, by Egyptologists, saying, oh, no, it's just coincidence.
Right.
But the longitudinal coordinates appear to marry up along with the speed of light. They say, well, what about the latitudinal coordinates? Well, that's a simple mathematical equation in its own, because if you put the latitudinal coordinates into a calculator, 31 point whatever, I can't remember off the top of my head the entire number, but if you divide that by 360, being the sphere, being the globe, we actually get 0.00864. And 864 again is associated with the diameter of the sun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, you can't really make this sort of stuff up. We know that the base dimensions, if you draw a circle in meters around the base of the Great Pyramid and subtract it from a circle drawn in meters inside the base circumference of the Great Pyramid and subtract the smaller number from the larger, speed of light. We also know that looking down from above on the equinoxes, that the edifice itself isn't four-sided. It's got 8 concave sides, which I'm pretty sure you guys are privy to. The deviation of that particular concave angle is 0.432 degrees. It's the same numbers over and over and over again. Again, you can't make it up.
Right.
In fact, if you look down from the Great Pyramid and see them concave 8-sided angles as well, it actually looks like what physicists have mocked up as a cross-section of a photon of light. Like the Templar cross in itself appears. I mean, they're soldiers of God, and God in the Bible stands for light. You know, everything that the Bible tells you that God is light. Without light, there would be no life on planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know, again, it seems that someone somewhere had worked all this stuff out, and again built it into a series of mythological heroic tales, which are, going back to your point again, are far more easy to remember. That like a hero's journey, you know, or a hero's tale, a mythology, as opposed to the all too forgettable grey matter of the human brain and the dynamics or the anatomy of the human body. You know, that's going to get lost in just a sea, a mirage of blurry quagmire that's very, very, very forgettable unless you build these understandings, scientific understandings, into a plethora of mythologies, which you can actually learn to read between the lines and say, actually, there's something really profound going on here. Or there were hawk-headed gods walking around ancient Egypt and resurrecting and walking out of caves. I mean, take your pick, but I'm quite happy with the road that I'm sort of tiptoeing down at the moment, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the Temple of Luxor an exact copy of the human body and all of the symmetry of the head, the shoulders, the torso, all the way down to the legs? And it's just like literally a mathematical diagram of the human body. So it doesn't surprise me that they're encoding, you know, anatomical knowledge into these mythologies and temples and, you know, why are they aligned with the stars? There's so much disconnection that we don't think like that anymore. You know, they were obsessed with this stuff. We're just kind of putting it together a little bit now.
Yep, no, 100%, 100%. I don't know if you can see on the screen at the moment, but just kind of capping off this sort of myth of Osiris, we can move to the Americas in a moment as well, because some of their iconography and mythology, not only does it mirror this ancient Egyptian cosmology, but it almost, it bolsters it, you know, as if to say, look, guys, what you were doing, we were doing, what they were doing, we all knew, you know. But the oldest surviving sandstone or hieroglyphic known to exist today still with the name of Osiris emblazoned upon it is actually on screen at the moment in the bottom corner of the screen. And what we find out of this mound of creation is a acacia tree growing out of this particular mound. And the cartouche that it's growing out of, the mound that it's growing out of, depicts the name of Osiris, which actually translates as seat of perception. So we're going back to the human eyes and pineal gland again with the photoreceptors that I was talking about earlier on, that appear to be mirroring this rather ill-fitting conical headdress and green skin, which makes no real sense. Again, unless we kind of look a little bit more between the lines, and it's allegorical connotations, if that makes any sense. And again, I've just reminded myself by seeing at the bottom there again this midway point between these Osiris identifiable sites being Göbekli Tepe and the Assyrian. We have Temple Mount, known as a dome of the rock, but it's also known as Luz, which again translates as light. You know,
Right.
I'm not making this. I'm just reporting on the research and the stuff that's out there, you know. But anyone from the outside looking in might think I've got some kind of fantastical mind. But this is there for anyone, the average Joe. You can be a brain surgeon, you can be a builder. It doesn't matter, you know. This stuff's out there, and it just depends what mindset you want to actually look at it with, you know. And I find that the more open your mind is with regards to these allegories, the more profound insight I seem to be kind of gleaming off of the ancients. And like I say, I think a lot of this is global. We've got a pre-Islamic deity known as Al-Uzza, and just like Osiris, she's associated, believe it or not, with Venus and Sirius, which we know to be associated with phosphorus and what have you. But she's also known as the goddess of vegetation and the mighty one. But she's also, her and her two sisters are synonymous with the belt of Orion. And it is said that Al-Uzza from pre-Islamic mythology only manifests from within the midst of the Acacia. It's like, how much clearer do we need to be about this? You know, the Ark of the Covenant was built out of shittim. We know that shittim is a variety of Acacia. What was it built for? It was built to commune with God. You know, yeah, I guess my religious feelings have been known on the net, doing other podcasts and what have you. I'm not sure what I believe in, but I believe there's something else, and I believe there has to be some kind of mathematical architect behind the nuts and bolts of three-dimensional walking everyday reality. You know, that it's too precise and mathematically profound not to be, you know. But to nail it down to one particular religion, I think, come on, guys, you don't have to be that narrow-minded, you know. For want of a better expression, I think that they're all kind of singing off the same proverbial hymn sheet,
Right.
but not really seeing the wood for the trees. And it's the acacia, the DMT that's hidden within the trees. You know, it's right in front of you guys.
Like Mikey said earlier too, like the whole mystery schools and the hidden knowledge and the esotericism of, you know, things being like hidden from you in plain sight. Do you think, one, because of just, again, you're saying they're all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet, and I would agree with you in a lot of ways on that, is it just the want to be able to explain it and the lack of everyone being able to have that same, like, whether it's Jesus or whichever deity, kind of bringing the knowledge, right? And trying to make it understandable. I think of it from working in medicine, right? When I was a nurse and trying to explain a procedure to somebody, where I used to say, like, some people will get it. Some people are a medical professional themselves and they can understand it. But then it gets less and less. And what are we really talking about, and how do we make it understandable to each other? So if I had a mechanic, I'd be like, hey, look, this is kind of how it relates. Like, we're going in tubes and pipes and whatever, you know. And what I'm saying is that just the earliest way of trying to understand the universe and everything, like you're trying to do here as well? Is that really what it's always been about? Like, because we're seeing all these reflections of, it happens in Egypt, it happens in this religion, they're kind of talking about the same thing. Are we all just still scratching for the answer of where and how and why? All, you know what I mean? Like, we're still trying to really trying to still get the answers.
I'll be completely frank with you. Trying to actually publish in The Spirit in the Sky, I hadn't had a DMT. Okay, I was kind of talking the talk, but hadn't walked the walk. You know.
Sure.
But when I was privy to what they loosely term as a breakthrough DMT experience, I went from, even from the understanding of what I was trying to put out there regarding what the ancients believed in Spirit in the Sky, I wasn't completely not sold myself, but you know, you want to see something to believe it. If you need the experience.
Sure.
But
Sure.
when I came back from that experience, I went from I probably had about the best part of 40 years, almost 40 years of my life thinking when you die, it's fade to black, dead,
Mm.
buried, consciousness switched off, no more, move along.
Yeah.
Um, I'm now the complete flip side of the spectrum. I can't verbalize what this overriding, powerful, friendly, familiar, albeit indescribable force of nature that I think I've been privy to via this DMT experience. But I know it. I know it's real. You know. And I think that probably 99.9% recurring of people that are privy to a breakthrough DMT experience would probably concur with as well. Um, I've got a very short list of statements here on the screen at the moment, which I'll just reel off to you, which were actually statements taken from the volunteers from Dr. Rick Strassman's spirit molecule experiments in the end of last century in the 1990s. One of them was saying it was familiar to me, just like it was familiar to me as well. I was overridden by a sense of, wow, I've been here before. But they continue. It was like I was in the waiting room for the rebirth of the souls. I was the light. Another volunteer states, I don't know whether it was my rebirth that I was re-experiencing or my death which was yet to come, because I know that time crumbles. The linearity of time is totally meaningless in these states. You are at the Godhead, the point where all time folds in on itself. And this one I just had to add because for my DMT experiences, this is, I mean, it's no less terrifying, but it sounds, it's a mind-blowing statement. But she says, there was no concept of time. It was so disorienting. I was so terrified. I have never in my life been so terrified to be blasted out of my body, to leave my body behind, to be going warp speed backwards through my own DNA and out the other end into the universe. And that, to me, personifies the entire DMT experience in a nutshell, whereby prior to reading this kind of testimonial, I don't think the human language is kind of evolved enough to actually verbalize in a nutshell what the experience will do to your point of existence.
Right.
You know, literally my worldview was shattered. It was literally turned on its head. I'm not a malicious guy. I've not got hate for anyone, or I love animals and this, that, and the other. But when I came back from my initial DMT experience, that love had multiplied just innumerably, immensely. I had love for everything and everyone. I was no longer scared or worried about dying, no longer worried about my own mortality. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to make the best of this life. And I can't explain what's next, but I know it's not fade to black, which is what my mentality was for the best part of 4 decades of my lifetime. You know, it did show me the proverbial light, if that makes sense. And I felt that for, I guess it was 8 to 10 minutes in my life, in my experience, I felt like Robin Williams in The Fisher King. Like, what year is it? You know, I was like, whoa. I've been gone for so long, but it's like, dude, you're fine. How was your experience? I'm like, man, I got so much to tell you, but I can't verbalize it. You know, right. It's almost like they're showing you the point of existence, what the cosmos is all about, what the universe is about. But it's like that. It's like a dream, you know. It's like you wake up and just. You run your fingers through your hair, but you're actually washing that experience clean in your mind, and you're like, I wish I could grasp I want to give you a little piece of that experience, but I'm not articulate enough to kind of verbalize it, you know? And
no one is. I haven't met anybody that does a good job vocalizing what it is. It's impossible.
I feel like, again, earlier with the whole like neurodisruptive, like a neurodisruptor, right? So I'm thinking about the last quote too of like the lady talking about how she's basically blasting out the other end. And I think of it like throwing a rock into the water and you see the ripples go out, right? So that's rock in the water, ripples flowing out as maybe the start of us as people and when our pineal gland is starting and we're then forming this body around us, right? We're rippling out from that initial seat of consciousness and then we're creating our world around us. So you take that neurotransmitter that disrupts you, and that's what my theory is at the moment is when we get to that stage or that blasting off or you get to that point of light, maybe you're just inside your pineal gland and you were bombarded with light because it's a light sensor and you're dematerializing from everything that is physical back to just the mental, right? So you're talking about like the waiting room before being born and this and that. I mean, even while I think you're in your mother's womb, that pineal gland will sense light, right? We hear all kinds of sound. Like,
hell yeah,
we're living inside all that. So
it was an actual
you're catching all that, and you're that it's really kind of interesting to me. It's really blowing my mind at the moment of the whole like kind of like dematerialized back to just that point of light in your head, and then again being born. But the other one, and I want to know your thought on this one is, right? So the time distortion of any psychedelic. Right, whether it's mushrooms or LSD or whatever, but DMT obviously has some very unique properties where people report, hey, I was gone for years, or it felt like years, and they're like, it was 10 minutes, buddy, and they're like, that blows their mind even more. But I've had this question to where, say when you pass away, unless it's something really fast, where you're in an accident and there's no time to like really have that DMT release, right? But when you're passing and they say your life flashes before your eyes and you see, what if that is that DMT and it's causing such a massive time distortion, right? So even when you're passing, maybe you live another life in that last 2 to 3 seconds or 2 to 3 minutes or whatever it is while your body's being flooded. Like, do we have an entire another experience right before we, finally ship off there? Like, it's a real weird thought for me, but I just wondered your opinion on that.
No, I concur with everything that you say. I mean, realistically, it's a fascinating notion. It's one that I still can't get my head around, but it's one that I think about quite a lot, to be fair. And it's associated with time as well. And it's linked, I kind of liken it to the material reality of solid matter. If you cut something in half and in half and in half and in half and in half, you're never going to get to zero. There's always something to cut in half, no matter how small, no matter how much you have to zoom into it molecularly. Like, there's still something there, And I think time is the same, that last second, that last heartbeat, that last moment of existence, that burst that you're talking about, that flash before your eyes. That can be dissected into billions of pieces, trillions of pieces, because everything's eternal, no matter how you cut it, excuse the pun. But if you continue to keep cutting something in half, right. There's always a new whole that has to be dissected in half again, and everything's infinite. And I don't see why time dilation may or may not work like that. Who knows? I mean, I don't think my brain's big enough to kind of even comprehend such a thought, but it's them sort of thoughts that I guess keep me going through the monotonous waking day of our 9 to 5, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, sometimes too with those thoughts and running that fast, do you ever find that you get to a point where you're like, I'm going to liken it to like the Incredible Hulk movie where he's running so fast he almost runs over and falls face forward, like you're like, do you ever feel like that where you're like, I have the information or I'm getting there, and then like moments later you'll go, I have no idea what the hell's going on. Do you ever waffle between those states?
As a writer, I probably shouldn't say this, but it happens more often than not, to be fair. But when people say, when you're in the zone, that psycho-spiritual pomp or whatever it is. Yeah, there's so many times where I'm struggling. I know where I want to get to, But how do I open this? How do I make this more digestible, more easy to break down for the average layman like myself as well? I'm not a brain surgeon,
Right.
you know. But something will happen, like, I don't know, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, everything's set up, I'm ready to go. I'm struggling. I go, oh, and then I just, like you say, I hit that flow state. And then before I know what I've done, I look up and I'm like, man, I'm starving. Crikey, I need to go to the toilet. Wow, 4 hours. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll take a coffee break and I'll read back what I've written. And in absolute fairness, I cannot remember writing about 80% of it.
Yep.
For real.
Yep.
And I'm looking at stuff on the page or on my screen, and I'm like, man, this shit's profound. Wow, what do you read? I've got to read this book. Fuck, that's crazy. Excuse my language.
No, you're fine.
You're good. You're good, brother.
Do you think that's because you're taking off the how do I want to put this? The filters, the controls, when we talk about auto writing or even, just trying to get into that flow state, playing music and singing and whatever, there is a certain amount of like, well, if I say this lyric or line or I play it, what are they? Not having the distraction of an audience or not thinking about who you're in, just going. Do you think that helps as well? And even to your own psyche, you go, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you free reign. I don't want to control what comes out of it. I want it to hit that flow state.
Yeah. It might sound a little bit balmy, but to a certain extent, I don't think it's necessarily my own hands or my own brain that's actually thinking about this and writing it down. I think my brain and my hands are actually almost taking the baton from, I guess, a psycho-spiritual essence which exists outside of my body, and it's just kind of right. Yeah, it's like you said, that flow state,
Yeah.
As I say, there's been a number of passages in my last book, especially, and there were passages where I hadn't even heard of particular hypothesis that I'm writing down, and I've actually reread something back, and I'm like, damn, man, I don't even know about this stuff, and I've actually had to research what I've actually written down, which is why I don't think, to a certain extent, it's actually my own, I guess, mental capabilities in putting pen to paper and writing something that flows and makes sense. I mean, I'm sure that happens a certain percentage of the time, but there's definitely states that I hit that I have, like with time dilation, like, my God, how long? Where's that time gone? I mean, I've written stuff here that I've written a couple of words that I don't even know the meaning of. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's, I'm not going to lie.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. I
can't understand it.
Yeah.
I can't understand it, but sometimes this stuff just kind of pours out, which is why I don't think that I guess this meat suit, which is me, is, again, those air quotes, is actually me. I think what you're seeing on screen and who I'm talking to is kind of the best interpretation from this psycho-spiritual entity, I guess, that wants to make me wear a t-shirt or a hat like this or live in an apartment like this. This is kind of the best guess at, this is what I want to project, if you know what I mean.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
But my existence, it probably did live somewhat exterior to me prior to me being born. It probably lives around me. I'm probably part of an interconnected conscious oneness, you might want to call. I don't know, because I'm pretty sure my brain isn't capable of, I guess, writing some of the poetry that I've read back in some of my material, and that sounds absolutely crazy. It sounds stupid somewhat, but I've got no rhyme or reason for it, other than, the nuts and bolts of three-dimensional walking, talking daily Rick Vooght. Just, it's not the real me, if that makes sense.
Totally get it.
Absolutely
Totally get it.
Does.
Yeah.
That's the whole, your higher self, is this actually us? Are we something greater? We look at ourselves in the mirror and say, oh, that's Rick, that's Bub, that's Mikey. But you have these transcendental, these experiences, ego deaths, or whatever you want to call them, where you yourself dissolves and you see for who you actually are. And then the experience of being kind of put back together is, if you've read a lot about what people experience on high doses of whatever it is, and it does make you think, are we something greater than what these meat suits are? I think we are. I think it's coming
100%.
from somewhere, and we're, like Graham talks about, and we're receiving data, we're receiving consciousness, but it's not being emitted from our brains.
There's no untoward expression that I can use to kind of, not even analogies or anything that I can actually use to describe a DMT space, whether it's hidden from everyday ocular capacity that it's around me all the time. I mean, I don't know. Crikey, the electromagnetic spectrum being 100%, visual perception accounts for 0.0035%. I mean, it's not even half of a 100th of a percent. You know, it's baffling. I mean, there must be so much more out there that we're not privy to actually seeing. But when we have these psychedelic, psycho-spiritual breakthrough scenarios on endogenous chemical compounds such as DMT, to actually find yourself in an indescribable reality, multi-dimensional, where you're looking from above, from behind, all at the same time, but it's constantly shifting, it's constantly changing, but it's new to you, but it's so ridiculously familiar to you, you know? And whatever these things are that appear to be running right up to your face going, do you get it? Do you see it? Do you remember? Welcome back, dude. There's no context or language that you can actually kind of compartmentalize it and say anything about it. It shouldn't be familiar, you know? Something so incomprehensible shouldn't be familiar to you, you know? Let alone, crikey, there's stories that I'm sure you've heard of where people have had free-based DMT breakthrough experiences, and they found themselves sort of lying on a table. I think the story or the testimony goes, they kind of sit up, and there's this thing, this being working feverishly at this changing like the machine, whatever it is, and the guy feels like he's on a spaceship or something, you know. And then this thing, this entity looks at him and says, "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be doing it like this. Go back. You shouldn't be here now. Get back." And they've come out of the DMT experience. And then 6 months later, after telling their friends about what they think they've seen and witnessed, about being told off for being in, I don't know, some alien spaceship, whatever it may or may not be, for want of a better description, they've had a DMT experience 6 months later, sat up on the same operating table, looked around, and the same entities looked at them and gone, "Dude, I told you last time, you're not meant to do it." These things remember you as much as you remember them. They're familiar to the process of this breakthrough scenario. And whether we're meant to be there or not, who knows? I don't know. But it's very, very strange when you get a number of people with corroborating stories that keep coming back and saying, "Dude, I saw, yeah, man, I was in that same place. I saw that shit. Yeah, man, that thing looked like a mantis, but it was huge.
Yep.
But it loved me. It told me off. It gave me a bit of a psycho-spiritual smackdown and said, don't do it again." But again, it was familiar. So bizarre, so bizarre. But these I'm just going to bring a couple of images up because I'd like to talk about the Americas very, very quickly, because these entities appear to be built into the zeitgeist of these ancient civilizations. Where are we? It blew my mind when I came across some of this. So what we have here on screen are depictions of DMT entities by a famous artist called Luke Brown on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you have a number of ancient pre-Columbian artifacts, which at least in my mind, hold a lot of water. When you kind of that, yeah, side by side, I think something might be going on here because,
Yeah.
excuse me, these pre-Columbian artisans actually had the same tree of life cosmology as the ancient Egyptians with regards to entheogenic extractions. Now, you've got a creator deity in pre-Columbia that's known as Itzamna, and Itzamna, Itza, is the prefix for the deity's name, which actually means magic and sap. Unless we forget again that the Mayan otherworld, loose air quotes, is also described as being hidden within the constellation of Orion. Orion being described by them as a gateway to the gods. I mean, it's I think some of this stuff is kind of quite obvious, regardless of what the naysayers like to say. But it's a mythology which continues to blow my mind, because you've got Aztec. Sorry, excuse me. I'm trying to get this cursor still. The Aztec and Mayan tree of life, known as the Ceiba, is symbolic of the underworld, and the Ceiba is also known as Sebulba, which translates to the place of fear. And I remember our DMT experience and the fear that you get when you literally blast off on this third hit of freebase DMT. And in so much, it was the gods of death, just like Osiris, who resided within it. But in the top left-hand corner of this Mayan tree of life, you can actually see the act of purging, which is a clear nod to the entheogenic use of the Amazonian medicine that we spoke about earlier, called ayahuasca. And at the base of this particular tree of life, the Ceiba or Sebulba, we actually see these deities with these little handbags. And it's like an extraction process, because they're talking about this magic sap, and this other world that's hidden within Orion, again, as above, so below. But we find the ancient Sumerian reliefs are often depicting the same kind of harvesting of the sacred secretion, which is usually collected and brewed in buckets.
So that's what the little man bags are. They're
quite possibly. I mean, if these deities are turning up all over the world, I mean, yeah, what are they going to bring other than knowledge, civilizing skills, you know? And what other knowledge, what more enriching knowledge can you want apart from knowledge of self? You know, like, hey, if you drink this, or if you smoke this, you know, you're going to see and feel something so profound that all of a sudden everything almost powers into significance, you know. Wars and all sorts. But this as above, so below correlation appears to actually continue in the southern hemisphere, because on screen at the moment we've actually got what's described as the Southern Crux constellation, which is a huge part of the Incan cosmology. And it's likened or synonymous with what's known as the Chicana. Excuse me. And yeah, as the screen says here, central to Incan cosmology is the Chicana talisman, which is symbolic of the Southern Crux constellation and the tree of life. Okay. So the etymology of Chicana is based upon a Chakai word, which actually means to bridge or to cross over. Now, the symbol's often depicted in such a way that only half of it protrudes from architectural structures, the cross thus being completed by the shadow created by the sun, which is a nod towards the shadow representing the non-material world or realm. But the brightest star, believe it or not, that we find in this constellation of Crux, their tree of life, they called it mimosa. And mimosa is a variety from which they prepare DMT-infused ayahuasca brew. So again, they seem to have identified this otherworldly entheogenic chemical compound from an extraction from within their tree of life. And in order for it to be remembered, again, they've kind of emblazoned it onto the cosmos with a plethora of stories that you can either, take firsthand, throw away, or read between the lines and go, actually, there's something a little bit more profound dare I say, scientific to this mythology. After all, it's not just it's not just minds of men and women that were, I guess, not privy enough to understanding anything other than a hunter-gatherer mentality, which is kind of what's been served to us guys via the powers that be for the past, crikey, 20-30 years or so. I mean, just to kind of back this up as well on screen in T1 Arku, and I've said that the suffix of Arku is an Egyptian word meaning light as well. But on the T1 Arco plateau, we find what's called the quartz monolith in Bolivia. And we find that the statue is actually holding ritual objects known as snuff tablets and pouches and tubes, which are actually used for ingesting powdered vilca seeds. And the vilca seeds, otherwise known as Anandanthrina columbrina variety, are known by science today to contain no less than N,N-dimethyltryptamine, bufotenine, and 5-MeO-DMT, all of which appear to shift our conscious awareness beyond the scope of everyday waking reality. And you can see that on the arms here as well, just to kind of hammer home this particular cosmology. The arms are actually inscribed with the vilca seeds themselves. So it was quite clearly an entheogenic, if not shamanic, cosmology that was extremely central to their particular culture and their understanding of life, I guess. Enough so to create such enigmatic effigies that have lasted the test of time, really. And I'd like to elaborate on this a little bit more, but until I actually publish this part 4 of the current trilogy, the Emphians in Antiquity, later on this year, kind of hesitant to kind of put out into the public what I've found recently. But this, as just as a little teaser, this all ties back to Freemasonry and the Philosopher's Stone as well. Ooh. Which is no less exciting to want to talk about. And until it's published, I'm kind of going to keep a little bit tight-lipped about it. But
of course, we'll have you back on, Rick.
Is it just me? Is it just me, or is there an overwhelming theme through religions and mystic schools and esotericism of drugs and psychedelics? Those were the people telling us this is how things work. And maybe again back to the pharmaceutical industries, like getting to where they're going to start dosing everybody with psychedelics through a standarded pattern. Maybe we're at that point. Maybe we're ready to take ancient history and bring it back and start. That's all I can think of, because it's blowing my mind. Because you think about all kinds of
zero-point energy, AI, quantum computing, all of that coming. We're going to need psychedelics to be able to handle all this.
Well, no. I mean, you're going to need psychedelics just to get people up to speed and not worry about buying the latest and greatest car or TV or Instagram or whatever. That you got to get people to drop all that. But then maybe, I agree. It's a way to, because again, if you try to get a world and shift the consciousness just through talking to them, like, hey, we got to get ready for UFOs and whatever, they're not going to do it. They're still going to worry about whether they got this or that, or if it's not their prerogative, and if their ego doesn't let them care about it, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's almost like, hey, you've been living in Plato's cave too long. Here's your screen drop. Welcome to the real world. And the UFOs and aliens are here. And if we look back at all this ancient, information, they were telling us it for a long time. And I also wonder if from the sky, like, because are they taking it and attributing it to the sky to kind of immortalize that information, like you're saying about even Osiris and stepping on the head of the rabbit and this and that and crossing over on, I don't know the name of it clearly, but were they putting that up there, or were they looking up there because it was so bright every night, even in the Southern Crux you're talking about? Were they getting the information from the stars and going, oh, that's down here. Oh, like the as above, so below. We're interpreting the language in the sky to tell us how things work down here. Like, it seems almost like it's what's going on in a certain way.
Sure, does.
Yeah.
Like the instructions are there for him.
Yeah. I couldn't say one way or the other whether it was coming from there, coming from us here and blazing it up on the sky. All that I know, all I can say with 100% certainty, in my mind at least, anyway, is that a lot of this is it's non-negotiable.
Right.
You know, the stars are they're fixed.
Yep.
You know, they've been named by a plethora of ancient cosmologies from cultures that are otherwise considered not in direct contact.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's going back to that same proverbial hymn sheet. There appears to be some kind of global understanding, you know. Crikey, in Australia, the Australian coat of arms today still has the golden wattle, and the golden wattle is an acacia. And their particular, crikey, at least the the Aboriginals, their story goes back some 65,000 years, and they talk about Barme, the sky god, that was, crikey, the first human was found. I think the story goes that the first human was found dead at the base of their tree of life, which was a gum tree, which is again we find copious amounts of extractable and then dimethyltryptamine inside these particular trees. And Biame, the spirit of the sky again, took up this dead fellow with the tree and shot skyward, and there was nothing but fire, and that fire rained down and created the Southern Cross constellation that the Mayans have also been talking about. Wow. It's called Mimosa. You know, they talk about the rainbow serpent cosmology. Now, anyone that's privy to doing an ayahuasca experience, they know about this rainbow serpent. You know, again, whether they found it independently and stitched together their own mythological tales in order for future generations of humanity to kind of read between them proverbial lines again and work something out, or like I'm more attuned to believing that there was something prior to the end of the last ice age, that there was a global understanding of what these entheogens are, where to find them, what they do to human consciousness, how they elevate it, and the importance of finding out. I mean, we just say no to drugs. We talked about the Reagan administration and what have you, and Lyndon B. Johnson, I think it was before, like in the 60s and 70s, that would just ostracize these, like they're off limits, stay away from them, you know. I think that someone somewhere kind of worked all this out, and again they built a systematical treasure hunt, I guess, to kind of find out why or what we can do with the human brain. There's no doubt that the human brain is probably the greatest greatest biological supercomputer ever constructed. Right. You know, and I think that the majority of our capacity as humans at the minute actually lies dormant. I don't think we've really tapped into what we're capable of. And I think that we're just starting to revisit what a lot of these ancient civilizations and cosmologies have tapped into. And I think that they found it so profound that they've kind of given us the keys, you know. And that I think we're kind of at the stage at the minute where we've been fumbling with the lock for a little bit, but we've kind of turned the key. Yeah. And it's up to society at the moment, not just to peer through that crack of light that's coming through, but to be brave enough, you know, to actually throw that door open and take a giant proverbial stride like Neil Armstrong, you know, one small step for me, but for humanity, this could blow the doors off, you know. Let's see where we can go. I mean, crikey, the moon's 239,000 miles away. Who knows how far away this singularity is, this cosmological consciousness that seems to have stitched together this psycho-spiritual understanding that we're all kind of arguing over who's got it right, you know? But yeah, if we maybe just stopped arguing and just kind of were brave enough to not just stare through that crack, you know, take that giant leap and go, wow, look at what we're capable of, man. And I think that that's why it's been so vilified by certain governments around the world, because yeah, look what happens when we can think for ourselves, man. We're pretty smart people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were pretty smart back in the day as well. I think that hunter-gatherer mentality, yeah, you can throw that one out with that baby with a bathwater, because that's clearly not what was going on. Yeah, everyone knew something, and I think that it's just up to us to kind of, as I say, take that leap of, faith, you know, see what's on the other side. I've come back from a few experiences, and yeah, I'd like to think it's only made me better. It's made me a better human. There's no doubt about it. And if that's illegal, damn.
Yeah,
we got to take it out.
Mm-hmm. Brother, I couldn't have put it any more beautifully as well. We do all have to come together. Maybe this is the way. Is religion the way, or psychedelics the way, or definitely not arguing with each other and being petty and not being open-minded. That's definitely not the way. So I agree with you. Everything you've said has totally makes sense to me. I'm open-minded to it. I think it's really, really just another level of helping us explain these ancient cultures, maybe why they were so different in their culture and the way they looked at things. And maybe we should go backwards and take a little bit more from these super remote civilizations that seem to be spiritually advanced. So, Rick, you're the man. Thank you so much, brother, for sharing all of this today. And let us know where we can find you. Let us know how people can reach out, find your books, and so forth.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure as well. And again, thank you so much for the invitation. We'll have to, again, when I put this next book out there later in the year, we'll definitely do this again. Because I'm itching to talk about the latest findings for the research, what have you. But yeah, I'm hoping to get a website up early this year. I still haven't done that. It's been really bad of me. But you can find me on Twitter at Vooght, RN, VOOGHT, RN. It's RN Vooght the other way around on Instagram, Facebook. Message me, help me, I'll help you. Every day's a school day. I don't know everything. You guys out there hold just as many pieces of that puzzle for that larger proverbial picture. It's not just down to people like me, it's down to the listeners as well, because we've all got something to give and offer. So yeah, I think the future of humanity, probably the keys lie buried in our past. And yeah, let's step through that door together, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Well said.
Rick Vooght,
Real
everybody.
Well
RN Vooght. If you guys ever come across his books, Instagram, all over the place. Great stuff, man. We were looking forward to that. We finally got it done.
Yeah,
and
we might have to have round 2, 3, 4, 27. Like there's gonna be some more of these for sure.
So RN Vooght, everybody.
Thank you
Rick,
so much.
Don't go anywhere. We'll come back and give you a proper goodbye. We're gonna outro the show. Put this baby to bed.
Fantastic, gentlemen.
Awesome, man.
Cheers.
There you go, guys. I hope all of you enjoyed tonight's episode. I know we did. Another mind blower, another great researcher.
Yeah.
Always looking for people to get us to look at something a little bit differently. And Rick definitely brought the heat tonight.
Yeah, and one of the things I had to ask him was the whole, because I do it all the time, where it's like, I like to think I'm right. I like to think I'm figuring things out and getting down an alley. But that's the kind of thing where, like, I'll pause. I'll have to stop myself and go, whoa, Justin, are you just full of shit?
Are you
really just on a bender? And but that's the way I check myself, because I've I don't know. I've been wrong before. I think it's just a good process of self-evaluation where, like, as you continue to go on, you have to ask yourself, am I being bipartisan? Am I being impartial? Am I looking at, it's a Bowser thing, right? Like Bowser used to always say too, a friend of ours, you know, does he want to believe in UFOs? Sure. But he can't just outright believe everything about UFOs. You have to have that parsimony of going, this is real, that's not real, whatever. It's just kind of having a level set. And again, even like thinking about the show I'm watching recently with Outer Range, like, all the, like, it just gets into very egotistical at certain points with some of the characters. And you can find that in ufology community. You don't get that at all from Rick. I mean, you could say any contrary thought and he's like, yeah, sure, I can go with that. I can think on that.
Yeah.
And again, like, if you can't let somebody challenge your beliefs, then that's a problem. Like, if you want to talk about it, yeah, that's great. And we both might walk away and go, I think I'm still right. You think you're still right? No, I adopted your point. No, he adopted your point. Whatever it is, like, that's the scientific method and process too. Like, of, hey, you gave me a lot to think about with the DMT structure of Osiris in the sky as Orion. And like, I didn't know any of that. I had no idea about any of that. So it's like, again, every day's a school day also to pickpocket one of his statements.
Love that statement.
Hey, man,
school day.
If you're not learning every day, there's something always to learn. Unfortunately, sometimes for me, it's how to change my tire. And in what type of weather am I changing my tire? Yeah.
Oh, man.
But anyways, I'll stop. It's a great episode.
No, great episode. Thank you to each and every one of you guys.
For sure.
Those of you guys listening to the show, we appreciate the hell out of you guys sticking around and staying with us. But let's spread the word. Apple, Spotify, start sharing those episodes.
Check it out.
I know we got a pretty nice kind of put together YouTube page, but we are looking to really, really grow those audio platforms. So spread the word. We love you guys. Peace, love, and chicken grease. We are out.
Later,
y'all. Oh, and thanks to Stoner and Master Control.
Always. The Wizard.
The Blizzard.